I don't know a lot about the Decred.
Kidding about printing.
Flooding the system with money.
Yes, exactly.
And there's no end to your ability to do that.
We will do whatever we need to do to make sure that there's enough cash in the bank.
I wish I was more educated on Decred. Decred. He is bullish on Decred.
In this show, we're just going to look at security and coin supply. Now, it's well known that if you're going to run a financial system or if you're going to run a blockchain, it has to be hyper secure. Now, Bitcoin has this absolutely nailed in terms of security. It has the most hash rate by a factor of about 1 billion. It's massive, the amount of hash rate. So anyone that's going to compete with that has to try and work out different mechanisms. And there's lots of different reasons why you try and work out different mechanisms. One of which is to be kind of more efficient. So if you think about Bitcoin and the amount of hash rate that it burns through on a single day, being that it's kind of like the same size as a country, obviously that's not realistically sustainable for hundreds of years or whatever, or however long this thing lasts. So the next factor you need to think about is how do we reduce the amount of hash rate but still keep it secure? Now this is where Decred comes in. And it was always thought of when Decred was beginning that this is one of the factors it would think about, and the way in which that it could take the best of two different systems and combine them and mitigate the worst of those systems. So as you may know, Decred takes on proof of work and it also takes on proof of stake. Now with both of those systems there are issues, okay? There are problems that make certain parts of staking centralized, and there are certain parts of proof of work that make it just too kind of energy hungry. So by bringing them both together and taking the best bits, you can actually do quite a lot with it. Now there's a lot of things that have been going around on the internet, on Twitter, and some really nice research that's been happening that kind of demonstrates how powerful this is. In the last video we looked at the attack calculator, and we could see then just by by putting some of the basic calculations together that Decred was pretty kind of solid. Now, the one thing I hadn't realized is the Bitcoin calculators, and what someone's gone and done, and I've got the links if you want to check it out, is they've gone through and they've looked at some of the top coins or the sound money coins, proof of work coins, and they've kind of worked out based on those similar calculations how much it would cost to actually attack them, and it's really, really interesting. So that's what we're going to look at first, and then we're going to look at the coin supply and where the coin supply is going, and at which point it will catch up with Bitcoin, and when things may or may not get really, really interesting. So let's have a look at the presentation and see what we got. So once again, it's well known that Bitcoin has this phenomenal hash rate and it has this phenomenal security, and it is by far the #1 proof of work coin. It thrashes everyone, and I've just put the stats here. And once again, you have to have security, and it's an important aspect of the financial system and any blockchain. If you don't have security, if you can't have long-term security, ultimately it is going to fail. So this is why Bitcoin is kind of seen as the Don, the proof of work kind of, it just mastered this, and it's absolutely brilliant. So let's look at some of these stats. So Bitcoin is 12 years old, Decred is like 4 years old, and it definitely does not have the same adoption as Bitcoin. So that's one thing to consider. And when you look through these stats, you can see that Bitcoin stats are so much lower. Sorry, Decred stats are so much lower than Bitcoin's. But as time goes by, you would expect them to increase, and that will be interesting as we go forward into the future, as the coin supply as the amount of inflation for the coin supply reduces. It'll be interesting to see how much adoption it gets. So let's just have a look at this. So in terms of Bitcoin, we know the price is high. Currently today, the price is 8,252, which is absolutely phenomenal, and people are getting good returns there. Now in terms of Decred, the price is really low. So it's £8.96, and it's kind of hovering around this kind of £9 to £11 range. It's really low, but it is a good opportunity to get in as long as adoption happens and as long as security happens. And these are the two factors we have to keep coming back to. As long as we have security, as long as we keep the adoption going forward, this is a great project. So once again, they both have a 21 million coin supply. So when it all finishes, when the last coin is mined, they both can have exactly the same supply. And I think this is, for any sound money project, this 21 million is where they want to be. Now, in terms of blockchain size and manageability, this is where it gets quite interesting because currently the blockchain size for Bitcoin BTC is over 300 gigabytes. And that's after 10 years. So, in 10 more years, you're approaching that terabyte stage, especially if adoption goes up. And it's going to take a pretty hefty amount of storage to actually maintain that, which is, is something to think about. The Decred, by instance, obviously it's only 4 years old, but the actual size of the the size of the blockchain is 4 gigabytes and a half, so say 5 gigs. And as that goes forward, you could probably expect that to be 15 to 20 gigs by the time it reaches 10. And there's a lot of reasons why, that's quite good. And the reason why you would want a smaller blockchain size is it will make it so much more manageable. But once again, we'll have to see this going forward. And there's also pruning methods, which people are looking into to maintain the size of the blockchain, to see if they can prune off old transactions to keep this size small. It's well known that if it gets too big, that's also a factor that could be seen as centralization, because it would take a more powerful computer to actually run a full node, or to run the equipment needed to make sure that the system is secure. So interesting factor there. So the hash rate, as you can see, this EH is quintillions, I think it is, and this PH is quadrillion. So you can see that the actual hash rate that Bitcoin has is it's phenomenal. It's the size of a small country that they burn off each and every day. It's absolutely phenomenal. And you'll hear lots about this in the Bitcoin community, saying actually this is brilliant, look how much power we've got. But the question I ask myself, is that sustainable? If you need it to be the electricity burnt off every single day is the same as a small country, is that sustainable? Is that really where you want this to be in order to maintain security? I would definitely argue that this is not a great factor. This is something that in 10 years' time might reduce the security, it might reduce the centralization or decentralization of a project. Whereas if you can have a low hash rate, and maintain security, obviously this is better, because it means, obviously, along with the blockchain size being quite small and the hash rate size being minimal to secure it, obviously means that more people can get involved and you can actually secure the system with a lot less power, which is absolutely great, and you can still get rewards at a decent level. Difficulty, once again, this reflects the hash rate. So if you've got a high hash rate, you're going to have a high difficulty rate, and the difficulty rate does get adjusted as more hash rate comes online, or if less hash rate comes online, it's adjusted over a certain amount of blocks. And obviously you can see that the difficulty rate of this is huge compared to this 30 million compared to, I don't know, 19 trillion or whatever. The next thing you need to look at then is the amount of nodes. Now, the nodes are arguably the area where the system gets secured by the most. So the node would download the whole blockchain and they would verify the transactions to make sure that they are in keeping with the rules. Now, as you can see, the Bitcoin has like almost 8,000, whereas the Decred has, today when I looked at the stats, it was 258, but that can range anywhere from that all the way up to about 1,000, I think it is. There's actually more nodes than that, but they're not always switched on. But obviously that does cause concern. You do want a lot more nodes than that. Nodes are really important to secure the system. So now it gets a bit interesting, because on the next slide, I'm going to show you, based on these stats, where we currently are. And I think, you're going to want to go away and actually do the research. So I've left the link. But as you can see, the Bitcoin, based on those stats, for a 1 hour attack in USD would cost $39 million just to attack Decred for 1 hour. That's based on the fact that it has a proof of work and a proof of stake kind of consensus algorithm that kind of keeps the system secure. Whereas Bitcoin has just a proof of work system, as do all of these systems here. There are a couple of caveats here, especially with Dash, where they have some security kind of entry points that they kind of look at as well. So there's there's a couple of debates online that say that this might not be completely accurate, that £2,000 is kind of probably not accurate based on 1 hour. So we'd have to do more research, but these are just based on the calculations that we have. And the feed for this is this one here. So this Twitter feed here, I'll leave it below so you can check out the feed. You can have a little look and see if you agree with it. So to attack Bitcoin for 1 hour is roughly $500,600 to attack it for 1 hour, which is still a lot. And it would mean that a lot of bad miners would have to point their mining gear at actually attacking the system and actually reversing it, or mining alongside the system, ghosting the system, if you like, before trying to hijack it. But this gets really interesting. And I mean, when I was reading through this research, I couldn't help but think, wow, if Decred carries on the way it's going with this very unique way of kind of protecting the system, it's just going to be massive. As the price gets higher, as more miners come online, as more nodes come online, it's going to be a pretty phenomenal system. And it's still not going to need as much hash power as what the Bitcoin system has got right now, which is absolutely phenomenal, which is brilliant. So in terms of security, this was a really interesting piece of research. But once again, you should read into this article and have a look for yourself and see what you think. See if you see it's true or not. Don't take my word from it. It's just research that I've been reading. So in terms of coin supply, this is where for me it gets really interesting. So I've put 2 arrows up here, and we're currently at 12 million coins in the system. And it's interesting to note that 6 million of those are just used for staking. So they're used for for buying tickets and verifying that the system is working properly, and voting on mechanisms for transactions, for governance, and for upgrades. So this is absolutely great. 12 million, 6 million are in staking. Now, in 6 years' time, when we get to 2006, we're going to be roughly at the same point that Bitcoin is at right now, with 18 million in supply. Now, when you've only got 3 million left to mine, this is where you're going to see Decred do one of two things. It's either going to start reflecting the price, which is my suspicion. So the price, once you have enough people in the system, and that only has to be roughly 40,000 to 100,000 people, once you have enough people in the system accumulating and using, it will start to reflect the true price, which is obviously, for a 21 million supply, is obviously going to be a lot higher than £9. The other thing that could happen, of course, is it goes the other way. The miners turn off their systems because there's not enough reward, and the price stays low, and it eventually dies off. I mean, that is actually, there is two folds to this. I'm on the opposite side. I'm on the positive side. I think once it gets to less coins going into circulation, when you've only got these 3 million left, you will see people turning on mining rigs. You will see people using the system more, and you'll see the price going in the direction it should do. Also, at this 2006 point, it will then be a 10-year cycle. It's roughly every 10 years is a development cycle. In most industries, that is the development cycle. So by the time it gets to 10 years, what you're going to see is the end of the first development cycle. It's when everything should work and everything should be in place to actually be used as money. You should see it being a solid store of value, a medium of exchange, and going forward, you should also see it being a unit of account, which is absolutely great. And remember, this is a worldwide currency. If it works, just like Bitcoin, it's going to be used for the world. Now, one of the other things that I don't buy into is that there will only be one. If you listen to a lot of the Bitcoin speech, they basically say Bitcoin is the one and only, there can't be any others. I actually think that there will be quite a few others. I think that this thing has a lot of legs, and 21 million is actually quite a low supply for this to carry on forward. So these are just my thoughts on where the system is headed. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that was okay. Hopefully it wasn't too much rambling, but as you can see, security adoption is really important, and because the foundation of this project is almost identical to what Bitcoin is, you can definitely see that they have taken on those values and they're driving them forward. And as development happens, this is going to be a really exciting space. So if you like that, fantastic. You can give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a comment below if you disagree with anything or you want to know more, and I'll try and help you as much as I can, or try and kind of fill in those comments as much as I can. If you want to support the channel by a small donation, you can donate to this Decred address here, which is absolutely great. Welcome received. And I'll see you guys next time.
I don't know a lot about the Decred.
Kidding about printing, flooding the system with money.
Yes, exactly.
And there's no end to your ability to do that.
We will do whatever we need to do to make sure that there's enough cash in the bank.
I wish I was more educated